Hi, welcome to this month's Outstanding Ohio webinar on real estate topics. This month, we're covering the 10 mistakes that home sellers make. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to share my screen here. Where is it? There. Okay, so top 10 home seller mistakes and how to avoid them. So first of all, just quickly about me. Again, my name is Erin Johnson. I work with eXp Realty. I'm a residential real estate agent. I focus on the Copley, Fairlawn, Bath, and kind of surrounding Akron suburbs, but I'm also willing and able to serve most of Northeast Ohio. I grew up here in Ohio. I've basically been here my whole life, other than the 4 years I spent in Vermont for college. So I've lived in the Fairlawn area. I've lived on the east side. I've lived in Lakewood. I've lived in Medina for quite a few years. I've got family in Canton, so I'm familiar with most of the areas. So, in this webinar today, we're going to cover the whole process of selling a house, starting from the decision to sell, which is a big piece of the puzzle, all the way through to closing and possession. And as we kind of go along this journey, I'm going to highlight the 10 mistakes that sellers make so you can be aware of them. Okay, so the first mistake is trying to time the market. It's not, I tell people this isn't like you're trying to put your money in the stock market. This is an investment, but this is also your life, right? This is, assuming you're not doing this for investment purposes, but this is where you're living, where your family's living. This is about your life, where you're going to live, where you're going to call home. So that is definitely should be considered. And right now, it's such a seller's market that you don't have to worry too much about timing when to sell it. Here's some facts, how's the market doing on how things are going in Summit County. So median days on market in 2023, the last couple months have been around 18 to 19 days. So houses are still selling very quickly all through the year. It might take a little bit longer in January, February, but it just depends. My experience has been generally, it depends on the area and the price point to a certain degree, and of course, the condition of the home. But we are still seeing homes go for multiple offers in a couple of days over asking. I had buyers in Fairlawn. They went under contract 2 weeks ago, and there was 7 or 8 offers. And they had offers, I think, 10, 20 grand over asking price and in like the first 3 days. So that still happens, not happening all the time. And sometimes, maybe a couple of years ago, that would have been 25 offers instead of 7. And maybe it would have been 50 grand over ask instead of 20, but there's still a little bit of craziness out there. The prices are settling down to a certain degree. This is the history over the last like 6 years now in Summit County, average price per square foot. And you'll see the big jump from 20 to 21, where we were seeing like 20% increases year over year. From 21 to 22, it settled down a little bit, where maybe you were seeing like 10, 15% increases in some months. And then this year, it's still above last year. Some months has maybe been a 5% increase. Maybe I think we might have seen 10 or 11%. But it's still definitely increasing year over year, just not quite as crazily as it was. Prices are also expected to continue to rise on a year-over-year basis. This is a national look, but they're projecting like from this month to this time next year a 2.6% increase. So again, settling down, you're not going to see these double-digit increases like we've been seeing, but they're still rising. We're not expecting a plummet of pricing. And people ask, is it the right time to sell? And really the answer is yes, because it is such a seller's market. This is the houses for sale in Summit County over the last 6 years. And you'll see the inventory. If you hear the word inventory, that's how many houses are out there available to sell. In 2018, in any given month, there was like 17, 1,900, maybe 2,000 houses for sale. This year, 700, maybe 900. So it's literally like less than half in a lot of cases of what it was 5, 6 years ago. And it's starting to increase back up a little bit, but it's nothing major. And to be in a buyer's market, I think you have to have more than 6 months supply, and we're sitting at like 1.3 or something like that. So there would have to be a significant change in the inventory of the houses available for sale for it to flip from a seller's market to a buyer's market. This chart shows how many homes had sold. And prior to this third quarter of this year, really, as crazy as this chart is, my takeaway has been like, gosh, despite this inventory plummeting, we're still selling a pretty similar number of houses on a month-to-month basis. And of course, there's, seasonality. Um, but there's also seasonality in how many are being available. So if you need to sell in the winter because that's the best time for you and your family, it's still going to sell. You may have less buyers looking at it, but they're still motivated to buy. And like I said, I mean, we're in November here, and this house that my buyers got had 7 offers on it. So it's pretty much always a good time to sell right now. So don't, mistake number one, don't try to time it. Mistake number two, not having a strategy for timing your buying and selling. So you don't want to just say, okay, I'm going to go sell my house, and you don't have any idea where you're going to go because of that inventory. There's not going to be a lot of options for you. So you need to have a strategy up front on how to do that. And I have developed this decision matrix to help you decide that. And it really boils down to 3 questions. 1, can you afford to buy without selling first? 2, can you live in the home while it's listed? And 3, do you have somewhere else to live, and are you okay with moving twice? So to dig deeper into that, to answer that first question of whether you can afford to buy without selling first, it really comes down to assuming you don't have a pile of cash sitting around to just buy a second house without a mortgage. If you need to get a mortgage, you're going to need the money for the down payment as well as the closing costs. And you're going to have to be able to pay 2 mortgages for a period of time. It is very likely, because of how quick things are selling, that you won't actually have to pay 2 mortgages at all, or maybe not more than a month or 2. But in order to qualify for the loan, you do have to have the ability to be able to do that. But there are some solutions, and of course, check with your financial advisor. But there may be some options out there that you're not aware of that help you bridge that, because it really is just a matter of like, once you sell your house, you're likely going to have proceeds that you can use to recoup whatever you did for the down payment and the closing costs, but it's getting you to that point where you have that money. So if you don't have, existing savings, you could potentially cash out some investments, but maybe another option is to borrow from your 401k. There's a certain amount you can borrow, and then you basically pay yourself back. So there's not, I don't think there's like a penalty for it. Again, I'm not a financial expert here. Home equity line of credits could be an option because you probably have equity in your current home. You could get a gift from a family member, or maybe there's some high ticket items you could sell to kind of get those funds to get things moving. So the bottom line is there's options to help you do that, but you ultimately do have to be able to carry the 2 mortgages. So, answer that question first. And for a lot of people, the answer is going to be no, either that you can't afford to do that, or maybe you just don't want to. You don't want to cash out your investments or borrow from your 401k. And so that's going to help you make this decision on how to strategize. The second question is, can you live in the house while it's listed? And that's a couple of things to consider there. Is 1, are you even comfortable with people coming into your house? Maybe you've got somebody that's immunocompromised. Maybe you don't want people coming in looking through your stuff. Like, some people just get weirded out about that and just do not want to deal with that. And that's fine. And it's good if you know that about yourself, and that'll help you make the decision on how to handle this. The second is, if you are okay with people coming into your house, can you get your house show ready? Can you declutter enough to make it, show ready? And can you keep it that way? And can you get everyone out of the house for showings? And that typically is going to include pets. Like, you can leave your fish, but if you can get the rest of your pets out of the house, that would be ideal. And I always say the more people and the more pets involved, the harder this is. The harder it is to get it decluttered in the first place, the harder it is to keep it clean, the harder it is to get everybody out of the house. Or maybe it's just you, but you work from home. So just think through those things of like, what would it be like that I'm still actively living in this house while people are coming in, looking at it and doing inspections and whatnot? And how do you feel about that? And so, speaking of clutter, mistake number 3 is having too much clutter or personal items in your home. So I'm going to give you some tips on what you need to do to declutter, starting with closets, cupboards, drawers. So I am going to break the news to you that people are going to open your closets, your cupboards, your drawers. Probably not all of them, but I can't guarantee you which ones they will. And I want, when they open that closet or drawer, to not have things fall out of them. And so, don't declutter your house by putting everything in the closet, because then when they go to open the closet, they're going to, get a mountain of clothes on them. If you can take half the stuff out of your closet, the better. And The drawer, same thing. Like they're going to open your kitchen drawers to see if they're soft closed or not. And if the drawer doesn't open because you've got spatulas clogging it up or whatever, it's just not going to leave a good impression. So as much as you can declutter those items, that's great. More important than that is the items that they see without even opening something. So your countertops, your flat surfaces, your vanities, your dressers, those should be almost completely empty. Now, this person's home with this kitchen did not look like this before they got it ready to show. Like they had out their coffee maker, their microwave, their, I don't know where their microwave was there, but coffee maker and knife block and all the things that you need in your kitchen to live daily. But for the purposes of showing, you really need to kind of clear it out as much as possible. You want the new buyer to envision that there's just so much space that they have all these opportunities and envision their own stuff on those surfaces. The garage and the basement, there's a little bit more leeway here because if you're decluttering, you got to put the stuff somewhere. If you can put it in a storage area or rent a storage space, or you have a family member that you can keep it in their basement or something, great if you can get it off site or put it up in an attic. But if you have to keep it somewhere, if you can put it like in the corner of the garage or the basement and make it look as organized as possible, people understand that you're getting ready to move and that you have stuff. This is a great opportunity to kind of pre-pack, like pack up the stuff you're not going to use in the next couple months and just have it ready to move. But you do want, for the garage, them to be able to visualize getting their car in there or their cars. They want to be able to see, like, do we think our cars and the lawnmower and the bikes and stuff like that are going to fit? So that's that. And then also like toys, paperwork. Again, you don't want your desk like full of papers. You don't want them seeing your papers anyhow. Toys, if you can, minimize them, maybe just keep out the handful of favorite toys for the kid. If you could put them in some kind of bin like this, maybe, or a laundry basket, and just take that whole bin and put it in your car when you're leaving for showings, that would be great to just have it not there. So those are some tips on decluttering. And then the other piece is, do you have somewhere else to live? So maybe you have a lake house or you have a family member that you can live with, or there's a place you can rent, or you're willing to go be in a hotel. Again, that's probably harder the more people and pets that you have involved. And, maybe you have that option, but you don't want to use that option, but just something to think about as you're strategizing what the best choice for you is. How does this feel to you as far as like having a temporary move into another location? And if you do that, it's likely that you're going to have to move twice. So you're probably going to have to put your stuff, unless your interim situation is big enough to keep all your stuff, you're probably going to have to put a lot of your stuff in storage until you can move into your next place. And what that's going to mean, typically, if you're hiring movers, is you're going to have to pay the mover to move your stuff from your home to the storage facility, and then you have to pay them again to move the stuff from the storage facility to your home. So it pretty much doubles your moving costs. Plus, you're going to have to pay a monthly storage fee. And most of these places, once you put your stuff in storage, you're not going to be able to access it. So think about what you put in there. Don't put your passports in there if you're planning a trip to Mexico, kind of thing. So it's possible. There's different options with like the smart pods and boxes and things like that maybe you can pack yourself and then they can store. So you might be able to save some of the moving expenses. But just again, something to consider on how do you feel about doing that. So this comes all together now into a decision matrix. Those 3 questions we talked about are the 3 in black, and to help you decide which path to go. So again, do you have the financial means to buy without selling first, or are you even willing to do that? If the answer is yes, then you're going to come down to this question about how do you feel about living in the house while it's listed, excuse me. And if you're comfortable with that, then your best option may be to go ahead and find the place you want to go and buy that first, and then go ahead and put your house on the market while you're still working through the contract of the purchase. Like once you get to the point where you're pretty sure that contract's going to move forward, get your house on the market and you can sell that. It may end up being like almost simultaneous, but you know where you're going and you have a place to go, which is great. If you aren't comfortable living in the house while it's listed, but you do have the money to buy first, another option could be you go ahead and buy the house and just move into it, and then you can sell the house while it's vacant, right? So buy first, totally move out, and then, sorry, if you're not comfortable with having people in the house while it's listed, buy first, move out, and then you can sell it vacant. So you don't have to worry about people going through the house while you're there because you won't be there. And then on this other leg of the matrix is if you don't have the means to buy without selling first, or you don't want to, and you do have some place to go, or you're willing to move twice, then you could sell first, go ahead and move into that temporary location, and then you can buy when you see fit. So that is an option. And then the other one is if you don't have the means to buy first and you don't have a place to go, then your best bet is to sell first and then turn around and buy like immediately. Like as soon as you're under contract to sell, go out and buy. There is some options to get some extended possession that hopefully you won't have to move, or you can make it your sale contingent upon you finding another place. You can try to make your purchase contingent upon you selling, but if you're in a multiple offer situation, that may not be a winning offer. So that's something to consider. And so I hope this helps you get your head around maybe what the best option for you might be. But I'm also happy to kind of go through your individual situation to see what makes the most sense for you and kind of look at the timeline and how that would work for you. So that is just step number one. And don't worry, we're not going to spend as much time on all of these other steps, but that is an important one. It's just understanding what's happening in the market. Should you sell, and should you even sell, and should you buy or sell first? Then we get into the preparation, hiring a realtor, doing any updates to the house, getting the house staged. So here is where mistake number 4 comes in, which is not working with a realtor to sell your house. And you may think, gosh, it's such a hot seller's market. I can just put a sign in the yard and the house is going to sell. And the truth is, yes, it probably will sell, but at what expense to you from a time and money standpoint? Because statistically, houses sold by a realtor are going to get more eyes on them, which means it's likely to go into get a higher bid, a higher offer, and a lot less hassle of you not having to be home for the showings, to coordinate the showings, to worry about people coming into your house. What's the security of that? To make sure that you price it right. And it's one thing to get under contract to accept somebody's offer, but it's a whole other thing to get that offer to the closing table. A lot happens between that point where the deal could fall apart with inspections, with appraisals, and realtors, we have the experience to help you through that process, to really monitor it, to make sure that it gets from contract to close and help you with negotiations and so forth. So highly encourage you to hire a realtor to help you through this process. Mistake number 5 is not disclosing issues that you have with your house, ignoring needed repairs, or making costly renovations. So if you don't disclose that there was something wrong with the house, that's a legal issue. If you ignore the things that needed to be repaired, that's going to become a problem. And if you put too much money in, that's not necessary in this market. I worked with a contractor to put together this list on which updates you should make. And under the must do column is anything incomplete. So if you like painted half the room and then stopped, like obviously that doesn't look good and you need to finish it. Any regular maintenance and cleaning. And I tell people, like, fix the things that you know are wrong. Like every time you open the closet door and the handle falls off, like take the time to fix the handle, or you flip the switch and the light doesn't turn on, or the light bulb's burned out, or whatever. Like do all those little things that you know need done, and make sure that it's clean. The things in red are things that actually the lenders may be looking at as part of their appraisal process. And if they find these, they may require you to fix them in order to close. So peeling paint is a big one, concealed wiring, or sorry, exposed wiring, broken gutters and windows can be a call out for them, and missing handrails on stairs. So definitely, you should do those things in that first column. The second column to consider, wallpaper. So although there's some, trends of people liking wallpaper, for the most part, most people do not like wallpaper. And it's a big turnoff to them because they know how difficult it is to remove. I've got a woman, by the way, that all she does is remove wallpaper, and I can give you her name, but it will, cost you some money. It's going to cost you either money or time to get that wallpaper off of there. And so if you would be willing to consider removing that, it is going to be a benefit to you, particularly if it's like in your foyer, in your kitchen, like one of the first couple of rooms that they see. If it's a border in an upstairs bathroom or a kid's bedroom or something like that, it's more important that first impression they get when they walk into the house. And then consider paint, but really only if there's a room that it's like a super bright neon orange, or it was an unfinished paint job, or there was some kind of major staining, or you can see like mold on the wall or something like that. For the most part, people are going to come in and repaint themselves, and you don't need to worry about overdoing it with the paint. Clean up your landscaping. That can go a long way with first impressions. Sometimes people will drive by the house and not even schedule a showing if they don't like what they see on the outside. If there's like loose faucets, dripping faucets, or like caulk that you need to seal up, that's helpful to consider doing. Carpet, I would say only if it's like very visibly stained or it's like shag carpet from the 70s. Again, that's going to be an immediate turnoff for people. I went through a house recently that I've never seen carpet in such disrepair, that they had a dog or some kind of pet that literally had like worn it thin, like that you could see like threads left of the carpet. And it just was a real turnoff of like, okay, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, how bad is the rest of the house? And then the front door is a nice, again, it's a first impression. So if it's in really bad shape, or maybe you can replace the door handle if it's tarnished, or paint it, give it a fresh coat of paint. That can make a big difference. Things I wouldn't bother with is major renovations. Like you don't need to, remodel your whole kitchen, or make an addition to your house. Anything that's going to like cause you financial strain or take a lot of time, because it's such a seller's market, it's not necessary. Of course, people do prefer, because of how high the mortgage rates are and how high prices are, they prefer the house that's totally updated and move in ready, and they're going to be willing to pay more for that. But your house will just sell. It's just going to sell at a different price. Bonus, if there's electrical that needs updated, if you can have your roof inspected, garage door, particularly if it faces the street, that can be a kind of inexpensive update that can make a big difference and give you kind of a return on your investment. Hot water tank, if it's really old, that doesn't cost a lot to do. And if you can like power wash the siding, the sidewalks, the driveway, that can go a long way to spruce things up. Okay, so now we've got the house prepped. It's ready to list, where you're coming up with the price, getting photographs, the marketing, the showings, and so forth. So mistake number 6 is overpricing the home. If most of the activity happens in the first 2 weeks of it listed, and if you price it too high and it doesn't sell in those 2 weeks, it starts to get a little bit tarnished, where people are going to start to wonder like, oh, there must be something wrong with this. And they may not be willing to come see it. So I have kind of 3 theories here. If people sometimes want to price it low to kind of generate that excitement and create that bidding war, which may happen. Let's say you think the house is really worth 400, but you're going to go 350, and you're just going to get a whole circus going here. The downside to that, potential downside, is maybe it doesn't work, and maybe you don't get the circus going, and somebody comes in and offers you 350. You kind of have to be willing to accept that, because that's what you asked for. And it also could deter potential buyers. If you price it too low, it might backfire you, and they might think like, well, God, the pictures look amazing. Like, why is this only listed at 350? There must be something wrong with it. So just consider that. On the flip side, if you price it too high, sometimes people are thinking, well, that market's so hot. Like, why don't we just price it at 450 and see what happens? You can do that, and you may get lucky. Maybe one person comes in and is willing to give you 450. Or you might be thinking like, give me 450 so I have room to negotiate down to 400. The truth is, with how hot this market's been the last few years, that people pretty much assume they're going to have to pay at or above asking price when they see that asking price. So if it's too high and they can't afford it, or they don't think it's worth it, they're just not even going to come see it. So more than likely, you're probably going to have to lower the price. It could take you longer to sell. You could even potentially end up making less for it by starting high and lowering along the way. And again, it could deter potential buyers, because they think, well, I can't afford that, or I don't think it's worth it. So I'm more a fan of, kind of price it at what we think the market is, where you're going to attract the qualified buyers that can actually afford your house. Because that's the other thing. When you price it low, you're going to get people in there that's like, great, my budget's 350. I can't believe I can afford this. But it gets a bidding war and ends up going for 375 or 400. And you're just disappointing a lot of people. And they weren't really qualified buyers for your house to begin with. And then it also just, ultimately it allows the market to determine the value. And the big thing, which I have at the bottom, is no matter what you listed at, no matter what I think it's worth, what you think it's worth, what you think it should sell for, it's the market and the buyers that are ultimately going to dictate what it sells for. The proof is in the pudding of what showings do you get, what feedback are you getting, and then what offers do you actually get. And what somebody offers you for the house is what the market is saying it's worth. So there's some strategies, but you have to keep that in mind. As far as the marketing plan, this is kind of my one-page marketing plan. I do pay for a professional photo to set up, sorry, photographer to do professional photos. People are looking online for houses and making their decisions off of that before they even step foot in the house. So that's a really important component. It goes into the MLS, which feeds all the other sites that have houses, whether it's Realtor.com, Zillow, or other brokerages and so forth. But I do also pay for a custom domain to drive traffic to your house. And then as far as advertising, of course, we can put signs in the yard. I'll reach out to the neighbors. Those can sometimes be your best salespeople. I'll either send postcards or because houses are selling so fast, sometimes I'll even just knock on doors and say, hey, I want to let you know that your neighbor's house is for sale. I know it's a great neighborhood and you maybe know somebody that might be looking to move in here. Can you let them know about it? Because sometimes their mom, their sister, their son, their cousin, they know somebody, a friend, somebody they go to church with, whatever, that wants to move into the neighborhood. Also market to other agents that, sell a lot in the area, or we can do brokers opens, and I run Facebook ads. And then as far as showing the house, we can do open houses. We manage the showings through an app called Showing Time. And then I do a lot to analyze, what's the activity of people liking it and seeing it on different sites. How many showings are you getting? How many showings is your competition getting? What other houses were, listed at the same time of years? Have those already gone under contract? Did they have a price reduction? So I do a lot just to keep a pulse on what's happening with your listing compared to kind of your competition, the other active listings at the time. So the things in black are what most agents are going to do for you. The things in red, you might not see from every agent. And I think that's part of what sets me apart. Speaking of professional photography, again, I do pay for the professional photographer who does a great job, but I'll also take the time to write written descriptions for the photos to help people understand special features of the room or like the layout of the house and so forth. And here's where we're going to have a little bit of fun. I am going to share some of the what not to do. So mistake number 7 is bad pictures. So if you don't have the professional photographer, or even if you do, but you didn't kind of have your house ready correctly for that, again, that makes a big or bad first impression depending on what's going on. So what's wrong with this picture? You do not want to have your cars in the driveway when the photographer comes, or your trash cans. Like, you want to kind of clean things up. And with the snow, it probably would have been good to plow the driveway as well. Toilet seats should be down, and anything, again, the counter should be cleared. You shouldn't have like soap and random toilet paper sitting on the toilet or on the vanity. With this one, sometimes this is easy to forget. It's the top of the fridge, because when you're standing in the house, it's like above your eye level, depending on how tall you are, and you don't necessarily see it, and you start stashing stuff up there, but that really comes out in the picture. And again, you don't want to be leaving medicines out at all, but just clutter on the counter and so forth. Your blinds and your curtains generally should be open to let the sun come in. So that's, and again, just kind of stuff sitting around. You should stash that away if you can. This one is, again, the car's in the driveway and the grass is very overgrown. So you want to have your grass mowed and everything outside looking nice before the photographer comes. This one, you might not even be able to walk up to the front door without getting attacked by that tree. So do consider the path to the front door, and if there's overgrown bushes and so forth, taking care of those. This one is just like almost no words that these pictures made it into the MLS, that, okay, make your bed. And another thing is people will stash stuff under their bed. It's like, hey, that's a great place to like stash stuff away so nobody can see it. But if you don't have one of those bed skirts, then that's going to show up in the picture as well. Again, stuff on the counter, but the other tip here is don't have, at least for the pictures, don't leave any evidence that you have pets. So don't have a cage or a bowl or something, a food bowl out in the pictures, because that might be a turnoff for people. And for showings as well, if you can stash that stuff away. It's hard to hide that you have pets. They're probably going to smell it or see hair or something, but just don't make it overly obvious. And then last but not least, this is my favorite one that literally made me laugh out loud when I saw this in the MLS, that they have this, like, whatever he is sitting on the front porch And to make it even funnier, he appeared in like several other photos as I was flipping through this house. And I'm not sure if they thought that was going to help sell the house, but it sure helped make me laugh. So if you want to get in a scary costume and be in the pictures, yeah, I'd probably recommend against it. So there's a little comic relief for you. Take a quick sip of water here. Okay, almost there. Mistake number 8 is poor showing availability. So if you are living in the house and you're like, well, I don't want to approve a showing at 12 because that's when I'm eating lunch, or I can't do any showings between, 3 and 8 p.m. or whatever because of some reason. If you are not making your house available to be seen, it's going to be very hard for it to sell. So you do want to be as flexible as you can. And I know sometimes it's unavoidable and we can work around certain things, but you want to be as flexible as you can with the showing availability to give you the best chance to have the most eyes on your house to sell for the highest amount for quickest. So, but if there are certain things that you're like, my kid goes to bed at 7, like we can block times and not let them schedule times. But you want to be as flexible as possible. Okay, so now we're through the first 3 steps of the process. Step 4 is the offer and negotiations step. So hopefully we've priced it right. We've got these beautiful photographs. We're marketing it. We're getting a lot of showings and we start to get interest and you get an offer and maybe you get a couple of offers. And mistake number 9, and this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, is actually taking the highest offer. So it's important to understand that price is not the only piece of the equation. This is a one pager I put together about what's happening in multiple offer situations. And these first 4 things at the top have to do with price. How much is the buyer willing to pay for it and how are they paying for it? As well as earnest money and if they're asking for any help with closing costs. And then there's when do they want it? When do they want to close? When do they want to give you possession? And then what is the offer contingent on? So you could have a situation where somebody is offering you 10,000 more than your next best offer, but maybe their lender isn't as reliable or it's a certain type of loan that's not as good. Maybe they are asking for an inspection. Maybe there's a concern about whether or not it would appraise for that amount. If they want to make it contingent upon them selling another home, there's other things that maybe make it like, well, you know what? That offer maybe isn't as good as the one that's for less money, but they're not doing an inspection and they're cash, and they're going to close quicker, or they're going to give me the possession that I wanted. So there are many factors to determine which the best offer is for you. And it is very much individualized on your situation. And it could be that, not having to move twice is a more important factor to you than getting the very last penny out of it. If you find a buyer that's willing to give you 60 days of post-closing possession, meaning you get to stay in your house 60 days after you get the money from your house, to find another house, that may be more important to you than another $5,000 because it's probably going to cost you more than $5,000 to move twice and find another place to live and all that other good stuff. So, so I'm not going to go through the details on this. I do have another YouTube video kind of outlining all this, but just know that there's many factors to consider. And that's one of the things I can help you with, guide you on, okay, that might look best on paper, but here's why maybe that isn't your best offer, or you should at least consider these other things and look at the whole picture. So once you've accepted an offer, there's typically some contingencies, some things that the contract is contingent upon. Typically, it's an inspection, an appraisal, a title search, and possibly financing if it's getting financed. And mistake number 10 is not being willing to negotiate. So if the appraisal comes up short, you may need to renegotiate on the price. If something comes up in the inspection, you may need to be willing to negotiate either a price reduction or being able to make a repair or something like that. So you do want to have some flexibility on that. I've put together this decision matrix on inspection negotiation options, which helps decide, should you make the repair or should you do a price reduction or should you do a closing cost credit? And depending on whether you're the buyer or the seller, there could be different motivations for that. And again, I've got a separate video on this. I'm not going to go through all the details, but just again, know there's options on how that gets addressed. If you don't have the money to do the fixes, there's different ways we can handle that. And again, that's why I'm here as an expert to help you work through the best way to still get the deal closed in a way that's beneficial for you. So now we've worked through all the contingencies and we've made it to the closing table, which is where you actually sign all the documents and the money gets transferred to you. And that may or may not be the same time as the possession, which is when you give over the keys and actually move out and utilities get transferred. So again, the closing process, the buyer and seller both sign, usually separately. It's scheduled at your convenience. As a seller, it could even happen a couple of days in advance. Then the buyer is going to transfer the money to title, which would be their down payment, their closing costs. The lender approves it, sends those funds to title, and then it's not done until it's done, though, which means the deed's signed and the mortgage is taken to the courthouse to be filed. So that's when title will inform all parties that it's filed and it's officially closed. And if possession's getting handed over upon filing, then we would notify the buyers that they can now, come take possession of the house. Closing costs, there are certain costs that the seller typically pays for and certain costs that the buyer typically pays for. The ones in red are actually required by the lender. The seller's closing costs, including commissions and title fees and everything else, usually end up around 6 to 8%. It is standard that the seller pays the commission for the agent, the listing agent that's helping them sell the house, as well as offers a commission to the buyer's agent. And there's been a lot in the news about that lately, that you're not required to offer a commission to the buyer's agent, but it is pretty typical that happens. And one of the reasons is that the buyer doesn't have extra funds that would require them, for them to pay their own agent, that would require them to have extra funds at closing. And they're already strapped to do their closing costs and their down payment. And so for them to have representation, it's helpful that the seller pays for both. And because it's coming out of your proceeds, it's not typically something that you're paying for out of pocket. It is, a cost to you, obviously. But then when you go to buy, you wouldn't have to pay the buyer's agent. So it typically nets out. And there's been a lot of, talk about it, and we can talk further, but you do have the option not to pay the buyer's agent's commission, in which case your closing costs would be less, but there could be some risks to that in terms of maybe buyers not wanting to come see it because they don't have the money to pay their agent and their agent still wants to be paid and so forth. But, rough and tough, the way the market's been working, closing costs are typically around 6 to 8%, including paying the realtor's commissions for both sides. And then possession. So this is, again, where you're moving out, transferring utilities and so forth. And some tips on possession is don't wait till the last minute to schedule your movers, and probably don't schedule them for the day of closing in case something happens and closing has to move, or and more so on the buyer side. As a seller, if you have to move early, that's fine. Make sure you change your address. Leave your house clean. Don't leave trash. The window treatments typically stay. Sweep up the floors, wipe up the counters. It doesn't have to be pristine, but don't leave a bunch of stuff like, hey, I think they're going to want this. Ask your agent if the buyer wants it, and be courteous about that. Transfer utilities. Your obligation as the seller is to provide that information to your realtor, and then the buyer typically calls and requests that the utilities be transferred into their name on the day of possession. And then typically I just have my sellers leave their keys in the lockbox and leave extra keys on the counter and so forth, and then we give the buyer access to that. But there are scenarios where maybe, you're staying in the house for an extra couple of days or even a couple of months after closing, you're kind of renting it back. And there's certain rules on, what you do during that period of time, but then you would transfer possession on that later date. So, all right, that's it. You've made it. you've sold your house and you've gone through all these things, and hopefully you've avoided these 10 mistakes, which is trying to time the market, not having that strategy for how you're going to time buying and selling, having too much clutter or personal stuff around the house, which takes away from the buyers being able to kind of really see it as their own, not hiring a realtor or perhaps picking the wrong agent, making too many updates or the wrong ones just to sell, ignoring major repairs, making costly renovations, or not disclosing or addressing issues with the home, overpricing the home or not being realistic about the market and condition of the home, having bad photos, having poor showing availability, taking the highest offer, or being unwilling to negotiate with buyers. So I hope that this helps you understand the best way to sell in this market and how I can help you through that. I'm happy to, be here to go through your specific situation and set up a seller consultation if you are thinking about selling. Thank you very much.